Good morning. It's Wednesday, July 16th. And this is a story that I found very hard to believe. There was a gang takeover that rocked the city, and nobody stopped it. And the city I'm talking about is New York City, and the area I'm talking about is in Queens. So 8 illegal gang members seized control of a notorious Queens red light district. I didn't know they had red light districts in Queens. They terrorized the residents with violence and extortions. And finally, a federal sting brought their reign to a crashing end. And the thing that bothers people and bothers me and bothers the people that wrote this article is what took so long and who let it happen in the first place. So 8 members of the violent 18th Street 54 Tiny Locos gang, most of them in the U.S. illegally, were arrested in Queens after years of terrorizing Roosevelt Avenue. Local leaders and business owners and residents repeatedly pleaded for action as the criminal activity increased. But progressive politicians offered little more than lip service, and federal agencies collaborated in a sweeping bust, finally exposing the consequences of open border policies and unchecked urban disorder. This was a 2-mile stretch of Roosevelt Avenue in Jackson Heights, Queens, openly ruled by crime, prostitution, and gang violence. And the locals didn't have to watch Netflix to watch crime dramas. They had front row seats to the real thing, and that's because of the 18th Street gang's Tiny Locos group, which seized control after a previous gang was run off. So the residents and the business owners found themselves shaking down, paying protection money just to keep their doors open. And the area's transformation into a third world flea market wasn't some snooze exaggeration. The very people who pay the bill watched as criminals set up shop under the watchful gaze of politicians who were more interested in virtue signaling than enforcing the law. This is stuff that I find extremely hard to believe. Finally, the Fed stepped in. After years of pleading, on June 16, 2025, federal agents finally moved in, arresting eight members of the 18th Street gangs and charged them with urban decay, racketeering, assault, drug and firearms trafficking, extortion, document fraud, and more. 7 of the 8 arrested were illegal immigrants. And the Fed message was simple enough. Let's not kid ourselves. This didn't happen because of a sudden burst of political will from the top. It happened because locals refused to accept living under gang rule and demanded act loudly and persistent in the face of indifference from their so-called progressive representatives. So how about that? The government's looking the other way. The community is pleading for help. And who elected these people? This community did. So federal officials, including the FBI and Homeland Security, described the gang acting with cruel disregard on the community. And the district attorney said the suspects had unleashed terror on the community through violence and other forms. And community advocates like the Roosevelt Avenue Coalition hailed the bust but warned that if the root causes, open borders, lack of enforcement, and political neglect aren't taken care of, this cycle will repeat itself with a new cast of criminals. And who's accountable for this? Well, many will blame it on weak borders and weak leadership. And the most galling part of this whole scandal is how predictable it was. Because for years under the Biden-Harris administration, border encounters and criminal alien arrests have shattered every record in the book, flooding American cities with migrants, some seeking a better life, but plenty bringing a criminal agenda. And while the left was assuring these people that these were just families seeking safety, these are real criminals showing up in places like Queens and turning neighborhoods into war zones. So this Roosevelt Avenue saga is a direct consequence of the policies where law-abiding citizens are left to fend for themselves. So what's next for Queens and the rest of America, they say? The gang leaders are now facing federal prosecution, and Roosevelt Avenue gets a temporary reprieve. So some in the community breathe a sigh of relief, but many are worried that this can happen again. So I leave you with that. A tale of good and bad. A tale of what can happen if you don't pay attention and wonder how it gets started in the first place. So have a great day. Take care. Bye.